Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Word with Friends
Words with
podcast.
It's the Word with Friends podcast. I'm John Wood with my wife
Beth Wood.
Beth Wood, and our special friends in fellowship with us. Introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Brian, and this is my wife, Laura.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so we have gotten together, and we're super excited to share with you guys. Basically, two couples who found the Word together and separately. I would say, is that true, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have a different perspective and how we got to where we are, and we'd like to share our love of God with you guys out there. And we just are excited to share experiences and how we arrived to this point. So Brian and Laura, I'd love for you guys to take control here and tell us your story and how you got to where you're at.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll start if you want me
Yeah,
to.
go for it.
Mine's probably the easiest. I grew up in the Word. So my mom and dad, when maybe I was 5 years old, I was pretty young, started attending a Bible fellowship. And there they just continued, and of course when we were kids, we were required to go. So but I've always believed in God. So, but as I hit the teenage years, I started to take it on for myself and take ownership of my own believing, my own walk with God,
That's awesome.
for myself. So, I mean, my childhood was really great. I had almost like what you would call Norman Rockwell childhood. I grew up in Michigan. Dad was a cop, mom was a nurse. We had cats and dogs. I had two brothers, an older brother and a younger brother, and lived right next door to grandma and grandpa.
Wow.
Really, like, yeah, literally,
Yeah.
like, I had a great childhood. Super thankful. Um, and when I was 10 years old, mom and dad decided to move to Florida. So moved to Florida, and senior year of high school, I met this guy. So
Nice.
by high school, I was faithful in the Word. Am I was I ever, and I'm still not, like, I think this kind of stereotypical model, like, Christian girl. Like,
Right.
I wore all black. I still wear black.
She's
You
the
know,
goth. She's the goth Christian
I
girl.
was the goth Christian girl. Like, I listened to rock music and alternative, and just I did not necessarily give a persona of what a lot of people think a Christian is.
Yeah.
I walked with God, I prayed, spoke in tongues, I speak in tongues. So, and um it was great because I still have, like, I still went to parties with friends. I still did, but when someone would pass me a joint or whatever, I'd be like, no, I'm good, thanks. There were certain lines where I just,
Yeah.
like, there were lines that I didn't cross um as a Christian, but I don't know, I still had a fun life, and I had, again, a great childhood, good teen years. I mean, teenage years are what they are, right? There was
Yeah.
people, whatever.
Well, that's the part we're
And
super excited about. I mean, look at just in that little description. I mean, think of how many folks are out there who think, there's got to be a specific way you have to be or dress or any of the things
right,
to have the faith that you have. And I'm fortunate enough to know you and how deep your faith runs, and knowing that that's where you came from, in thinking that there were kids at school who probably had no idea, and it would have
yeah,
been this awesome thing that
oh
you could
yeah.
have. I think it's great. So what a way to already jump into what we're going to be talking about. So cool.
For sure.
Senior year, I meet this guy, and I'll back up just a little bit. When I was maybe about 14, 15, I prayed to God that I would meet my husband young. I knew that I didn't want to date. I knew I just wanted to be with my person and just whatever, be with my person. And I met him when I was 17.
Hmm.
So senior year of high school, like right before then. And it was one of these where I just looked at him and it's all, I believe God showed me his heart in that moment.
Not literally.
And it wasn't actually in that moment that I spoke to him. It was a little bit later. Actually, it was very high school. We had a mutual friend. Hey, Christina,
Of course.
Brian. I don't
Passing
like him.
notes back
Yeah.
and forth. Do you like me? Yes or no?
Check the box. So
With those paper
I'll take
things.
your origin. You can take over with your
My
origin story
Yeah, my origin story.
from there.
Does that lead into
Uh,
Brian's origin story? Is what you're saying?
Yes,
Well,
yes.
that is where our paths converge. After
That's
that, it's
awesome.
pretty much Brian and Laura. Everything before
Yeah.
that was kind of like on our own, and then pretty much from that point on, it was the BNL show. So, anywho,
How fortunate.
my
And
child
so you guys have been together. How long have you've been married now? Or together? Let's do that first. As a couple?
97 since 97. So what's
So
that?
23 years.
20.
Wow.
Well, leg up.
Math. It's closing. 2027 will be 30 years, right?
2027 will be 30
So
years.
we're in 2024, so
Oh,
it's
yeah, so
27 years.
27 years.
In
Wow.
September will be 27 years.
Gosh, you take that into account of how
Not
young
old, guys.
as a
Like,
couple you were when you started, and knowing that faith was a huge part of, obviously it sounds like it was maybe a part of your relationship that was in there. Yes, no. But it sure attests to the longevity of your relationship.
Mhm.
no doubt, no doubt.
So Brian,
I
you,
think
you came from a different background.
much different. I think that just
You were born a
If we
coal
didn't have-
miner's daughter, I think is what you said.
if we didn't have the word at the center of our relationship, I don't think it would have lasted as long and been as healthy as it is. But working backwards, so my childhood was not so Norman Rockwell. It wasn't bad. I had a good childhood. I can't complain. I was very much, one of the feral children of the 80s and stuff like that. I grew up in a small town in Central Florida on the Nature Coast where most people fished and just about every weekend, if not more. Everybody had a boat. Everybody had you could wet dock right off your backyard, just like we
Wow.
could. We had a place, you opened the fence and rolled right into the lake, and you went out, you bass, you were fishing for bass, most likely. Jumped in the pond, jumped in the same lake with, when I was a kid. My
With
mom
some
had
alligators.
alligators. My mom had to we always had this tales, kids always, my brother and I love to embellish tales. So it was probably not as dramatic, but we always say that my little 5'1" mom hopped the fence and just dove into the water before I hit the water and fished me out of the murky waters of Lake Henderson. So, very dramatic. It was always over embellished, but very much, that feral child. We were in the woods, remember getting chiggers, remember getting, all kinds of fun stuff that hanging out in the woods did as a kid in small towns and stuff like that.
See, that's something about you. I did not know your family were outdoorsy.
I did not peg you as an
No.
outdoorsy
I mean, you
Yeah,
told me
yeah,
stuff, you shared how your mom likes to garden and that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
to the extent you're now talking about, this is
He's a
new insight, new layer to Brian that we didn't know.
All right.
Super cool. More, we're gonna get more out of this than we thought.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I'm about to start charging now. So
Yeah, this is awesome.
But yeah, we grew up, we had a bass boat, went out fishing and stuff like that. I mean, my brother and my dad both have like trophy basses on their walls. My dad had he has another, fish from his earlier years before BC, always BK, he would always say, before kids. But I never caught anything big enough to mount on the wall. I always caught the bait. I'd get the shiners and then they would take them and go land the basses and stuff like that. But I was very much, I love being outdoors, and I still do. I still like being outdoors. It's something that brings peace. But I think it started there, getting lost in the woods, and
Lost on the river.
yeah. that's a tale for another day. We'll go down that. We'll go down that one. I have all kinds of fun, stupid stories from my childhood.
That's
I'm
awesome.
surprised
We'll hear them all.
surprised
Yeah,
I'm still
yeah.
alive. You know, if you didn't believe in guardian angels, I think mine probably has a special place in retirement for keeping my brains inside my head
Yeah.
through my childhood to get me to the point
Same.
of salvation. But so anyway, grew up, you know, just boring life as kids, you know, up in, you know, it was in Inverness and then moved to Spring Hill where we met in high school. But, you know, I was I was a troublemaker in that I had an anger streak. I had a mean streak, and I would start fights, and like I shoved a kid out of his chair one time because he looked, you know, made me mad, and I had to bury that deep down inside. And I was told I was going to go on my permanent record, and that was going to
His
follow
mom
me.
was very big on the
The
permanent
record was going to
threat.
follow
He
me through
took it
life.
down.
So I
Yeah.
spent a lot of years pushing that down and shoving it down and stuff. And now I'm trying to balance that out in these years. But you know, I got to the point where like I tried not to ever slip up. My goal in high school was to be almost invisible. Like I made it a point, like I didn't even get into the yearbook. I didn't think there was some point where I don't even know if my name was
Your
mentioned.
senior year, you were.
I didn't get
not
no pictures in my
in-
senior yearbook.
There's
I
no
like,
record of you.
yeah, it's like
Wow.
no record of me in the senior yearbook, which some people are like, why? It's like it's a memorial and stuff. I'm like, no, that's good.
Wasn't in your bag.
That, by the way.
But yeah, so I mean, you know, I did the literature club, and that's where Laura was. I was working with I was an editor for the literary magazine and book and stuff like that in our high school, and Laura she was in the thespians.
Yeah, we were
the
thespians.
theater,
Not
and that's
lesbians, guys.
thespians.
Thespians.
That's
The
been, yeah.
actor.
Mhm.
The
Theater
actor.
kids.
But and that's like we had friends who were in both and stuff, so that's where they, you know, got the whole like, hey, someone likes you. And that's what I was told. I was told someone likes you, and I didn't know her from Eve. I don't even like we ran in the same circles, but we never actually interacted. Even from middle school.
Yeah, this is
we were in the same middle school.
Mhm.
4 years of high school, 3.5 years of high school.
Never interacted.
Like I might have known her name or something like that, but again, if I thought it was honestly somebody else. Like, oh, it's this. I thought it was this other girl who was, you know. I was like, okay, and then I
Aren't you
was,
glad it was me?
yeah,
Of course he was.
yeah,
All other answers are.
yeah. But I mean, I was a shy knucklehead. You know, I didn't have my beard yet, and
Right, yeah.
but I didn't date a lot. I was like nervous about it. I dated one girl, and it was a freaking nightmare, and it was just terrible. It was one of those moments where you're like, God, I don't ever want to do this again. I'll just go be alone for my life. So, but then this situation came up, and I was introduced the situation here,
The situation.
and I was told, you know, hey, this girl Lori wants to go out, you know, wants to talk to you or whatever. And I said, would you like to go to dinner sometime? I pulled out all the suave I ever had. It wasn't like, because in high school, 90s,
High school
in the 90s, it was like, you want to go to the movies?
Well, and it wasn't even that. It was, you want to go out with me?
You want to go out with me, or you want to go to the movies or something?
And then all of a sudden you're dating.
Yeah. And I was just like, go to dinner sometime.
And
I
everybody thought that was very smooth of him. All like,
Right.
I had to pull
our
out
friend group.
I had to pull out like you know, when Harry Met Sally, I had to pull out all my movie references, like how to be like just smooth and stuff like that. I tried to do the best, like, and it was just
Because when you think
of
of smooth, Billy Crystal is right on the top of the list.
yeah,
So it sounds to me like Laura had something in mind. So when she handpicked you and said, this is the guy,
Yeah.
and then
I didn't have a choice. She bonked me on the head and just took me away, like, you know,
Nice.
but she had a biblical view of things with that in mind. But where were you biblically at this
yeah.
point?
So yeah, I skipped that part. And I
You
guess it's
did.
kind
That's
of
a huge. That's was one of the
kind of
reasons why we're here.
why we're here, right? Yeah. So the
The
word
word
with
with
friends. We're not going
friends.
to talk about that. So I was not a Christian. I was raised Jewish, and by that point in high school, it was bordering on agnostic because we didn't really practice. You know, it was And again, I don't want to go into all the details necessarily, but we
Sure.
weren't ever accepted as Jews because my mother was not a Jew. She was a proselyte.
Okay.
So she and her children were not considered Jewish. So there was some flack, and then eventually we moved away from the synagogue that we were going to, which was in Ocala. And when we moved to where we were living, they had one, but then it kind of fell away. You know, I never got bar mitzvah. I was too young at the time, and then by the time I was of age, it was not really a big thing. We were basically secular. I would say
Mhm.
I wasn't antithetic towards being Jewish, and it was always kind of a point of pride because there weren't a lot of us there, you know.
Sure.
But it wasn't something I practiced. You know, we did, you know, Rosh Hashanah, we did Passover and stuff as kids, and Hanukkah. Those were the three big ones. And even Rosh Hashanah was kind of like, you know, Passover was the big one, and then Hanukkah because it rivaled Christmas, you know.
Right.
And but it was good. I mean, I never felt like ostracized by it because of it and stuff. But I just, as I got older, again, grew up we were children in the 80s. We were teenagers in the 90s, and it was very nihilistic. I mean, the culture, the zeitgeist of the time was very nihilistic and anti-Christian. And the music, I mean, both listened to, like, you know, again, either it was metal or if it was alternative music, it was very anti-Christian, anti-Jesus and stuff. And I didn't know any.
Sure.
Sure, it's cool. Sounds good to me. You know, listening to all the popular industrial music, some of that stuff
Yeah.
I still enjoy, and some of it I'm like, you know, I can't listen to this anymore. And so I was at a place where I was antagonistic, I would say, to Christianity as a whole, but I never really sought out people who were Christians to poke fun at them and stuff. Like I would, because I was that kind of person. Like in high school, I made it my point to be the person who had good ties with all the groups. Like you had groups and like it was gangs, but like groups who were very like
Clicks. Yeah.
cliques. But I was cool with all of them. Like I made sure that I was like good with the jocks, the nerds, you know, the popular kids. I wasn't like going out with them all the time, but I was just smooth enough to, like, you know, nobody messed with me. Again, walking kind of just and like out of the turmoil of all of that stuff. And I think I think I carried a bit of a persona at times where people were like, I don't know if this person's crazy enough to kill us with his bare hands, but we're just going to kind of leave him alone. Like, I think I kind of gave that persona off a little bit at times. Just like, you know, seems cool, but we don't want to make him mad. Don't piss him off and stuff. So
at that time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I know of the Jewish religion is that they didn't feel that when Christ came, that we now know Christ came, that that was not the coming of Christ, and they're still waiting for the first coming of the Messiah. Is that correct? Is that how you were raised?
They're waiting for Messiah, and again, forgive me because the knowledge it's been many.
Sure.
No, we're going to hold you to this, and we're going to make sure that all the
you're
letters
you're gonna back check my history there, but
that's right.
Yeah. But
in care of.
I think that many, from what I understand, many Jews, they still await Messiah. But one thing that someone told me in my family once when I tried to talk the word to them and say, this is, you know, and when I got into the word, because I got into the word for not so spiritual reasons at the beginning, because I liked the girl and she wanted to take me to fellowship. And she's like, well, you go to fellowship. And I'm like, well, if I get to go on a second date, sure. You know, and
a bad strategy.
and I was, hey, you know, and she already had it in her mind, if I can take your piece of the story, that if after a couple fellowships, if I didn't, you know, if I wasn't continuing to go, she's like, I'm gonna cut ties and keep moving.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want to be
she had a plan.
unequally yoked, right? That's what the word says. She didn't want to be unequally yoked. And thankfully that even after some of my bumbling and ridiculousness, she still held on, and she got some good wisdom from a friend of ours who told her to give me another chance.
I think you should tell the story because it's funny.
Oh man. Yeah, I made fun of we were driving, we had our dinner. It was a great dinner.
He took me out to Chili's, which is not bad for a high school dinner.
I mean, I couldn't afford Ruth's Chris at that time.
No, listen.
I can't afford it now.
I was making $4.50 an hour or whatever it was. But anyway.
On the ride home, he turns to me and says,
I don't remember. What do I say?
Have you ever met a born again Christian?
Yeah, literally said born again Christian. Have you ever met these born again Christians and
I
stuff?
looked at him. I was like, yeah,
You're like, and you have too.
yeah,
I mean,
and
yes, you are one.
you're
aren't
one of
you?
them, are you?
Yes, I am.
Get
So
it. I get it
the
now.
almost ended right there.
Yeah, she
And
did.
it almost ended right there. But he was like, "I'm sorry," and our mutual friend was like, I told him about it, and he's like, "You should just give him another chance." So I did, and glad I did.
Yeah.
But it was pretty
Yeah.
funny
Because she took, and then she took me to fellowship, and I was very much, again, in the 90s, it was like, I was like, science, 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 show
Mhm.
me the science. And science couldn't explain religion, and it could not tell me, like, I'd read the Bible, and I'm looking at it from my literary background and stuff, and not understanding things that, and I'm like, oh, this doesn't make sense, and it doesn't flow, it doesn't make sense. And why is it written with all these ands? It's like, why would they use all these ands? I don't get this. This is so like,
Right.
it's like, and then I learned later that it's there for, it's another figure of speech that all I knew was a handful of them, and this was not one of them. But, so I just like, whatever, put this down. It's like the whole creation story doesn't, I don't get it, blah, blah, blah. And, and, but it was, I went to fellowship, and I was like, okay. And it was she took me to, it was a Sunday teaching service on the salt covenant.
Mm.
And, the teacher went
me.
into the historical side of it and the word-based understanding of it. And that hit my Jewish heart, because I knew what that meant. Like, he went to the Old Testament,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because I only ever, everything was about Jesus. Everything was about,
Mhm.
his crucifixion and stuff. And I'm like, that always turned, I'm gonna be honest with you, the whole crucifixion thing turned me off to Christianity a lot. I always felt it was weird. And now this is on recording, so for posterity. But, it was one of those things that, like, it turned me off, because it was always about, like, the sufferings and this and that. And it's like, I already have enough mental baggage. I feel terrible enough in my own head. I don't need more baggage.
Right.
But this team just got to, like, brass tacks. It's like, here it is in the word. This is what it says. This is what it means. And then it hit my heart to, like, what that level of commitment meant. And I was like, okay.
And
Okay.
didn't they talk about the science of like what salt does in your body?
Yeah, it was
too?
like it was just, it checked all the boxes. And I was like, okay, I'm paying attention now, and I'm listening. And it softened my heart, because I had a hard heart towards Christianity. I was very much,
Sure.
felt this was false. And again, what a family member, when I tried to speak the word later in life, they're like, well, I was told to worship God, not a man. I'm like, well, God, Jesus Christ is not God, and I'm not telling you to worship Jesus Christ. That separation there was very definitive, and what drew me into this word, understanding the difference between, that uh that relationship with God, and where Christ lived, where Christ exists in that relationship, and that they are not the same person. And that's my understanding. And that was something that others in my family could not get around. And I tried to explain that, but it's just something that wasn't there yet. But
It's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there's where we'll dig into some of that truth as we continue to talk about different things, and that's kind of what we're hoping that our conversations are going to be about, is
Yeah.
topics like that, which are these are sometimes hard things to talk to. It's sometimes hard to talk to just even Christians who believe, about those kinds of things, because the mainstream is definitely not, doesn't believe specifically that.
Right.
But yeah, so that's awesome.
We have an interloper. So.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, it's all good. We got our little puppies down below, and we're hoping that
She doesn't
start
bite one of the
pulling cords and
cords.
stuff too. So
Yeah,
we get it.
this one likes to eat those plants up there. So sorry about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and at this point, as far as like how much I want to share on that, hopefully this will be a good, point to, jump off point, start off point, how we do it. I'm not sure how many layers of the brine onion I want to pull back, peel back.
No,
Well,
no.
I think
I think gives us
Wow.
it gives us a good idea of where you came from, though, because we're
Yeah.
looking at two very different backgrounds, and the two of us have very different backgrounds, even
Yeah.
from yours. So, um, just to see how we can all come to the common place of God's truth, the things that we had to overcome as individuals, as couples, and then just life and our environments, and who we hung out with, like the things that you used to do and how you had to put a filter in there. Where's the filter coming from? It's the word. And I think that's going to help a lot of people, maybe listening, that
Yeah, that's
are going through similar things.
and that's the total hopes of what we're talking about. Us getting together to share all this stuff is this differences in where we come from and experiences. Yeah, and how your love of God is still, the same as my love, and we share all that together, and it's not, where they're previously, before finding our way here, may have been crossroads that we would have been like, hey, I don't know if I can associate with with you, like, based on your background, or maybe I would have prejudged on different things, or who's to say, how do you continue to keep walking down that path that you were where you're kind of secluding yourself, you wouldn't be making the impact that you make, like you do in our fellowship that we're in.
Yeah.
And that person wouldn't have been a part of that. So, God knows. And it's so awesome the way he led you guys together. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And I think it's important too to understand that, to viewers or listeners, that just because I got born again and I have a piece of, I have Holy Spirit, and I have a piece of perfection in me, that Holy Spirit's perfect, doesn't mean the other parts of me are now perfect also, and that we continue to work on these things.
It's
And I think
work.
Yeah, for sure.
those will be topics that we talk on um in future episodes. But again, that aggression that I talked about as a child, it's like I fought that for years and far into my adulthood, even as a parent. But now I'm fighting the whole, you know, suppressing that, finding that balance too. So, and I'm finding ways to um exercise that, you know, those issues out, because
True.
it's easy to just say, well, just believe hard for it and stuff like that. But I find it difficult to just say that. I think that that's a scapegoat, and then all that's going to end up doing is bringing condemnation, because sometimes you need action.
Yeah.
Believing is
Most
action,
times.
yes,
Yeah.
but a lot of times you need some kind of action. You might need assistance, you might help, something like that. And I think it's important to realize that as well.
So just to give our listeners a reference point, so for the both of you, how many years would you say that you've been in the Word?
I mean, 44 for me.
Yeah.
Well, how many years did we say we were together?
27.
27. So I'd say 27-ish and a half.
So I
Because
think
like I said,
good. It's good for
I
folks
got
to
in the word.
know.
Yeah, I got in the word not long after we started dating, because again, I went for originally, like I said, I went initially for Laura's sake and to get involved, but then when I
Sure.
chose to go for myself, it wasn't very long after that I said,
Yeah.
I'm gonna start going for myself. If she couldn't go, I was gonna find a way to get to fellowship. So yeah, I'd
Yeah,
say,
that's awesome.
right around the same time. Yeah. What about y'all?
Yeah, go ahead, babe.
Yeah. So I grew up Catholic. I did my confession, my communion, my confirmation, all the sacraments that I could. um, but I always felt like I didn't belong there, because I couldn't grasp, the whole Mary is the mother of God thing. That really stumped me. And now I know why, because I know the truth of who she was and who she was to Jesus, and who God is in reference to Jesus, and Jesus in reference to God. So it's so much more makes sense now. But that was always something that I struggled with. And I always struggled with the fact that I wasn't given direct communication to God, that I had to go through a priest in order to say my confession, for that message to get to God. And then I'd have to do these certain prayers or whatever to get right with God again. I never quite grasped that either. There were a lot of questions I had that went unanswered, a lot of issues that I had with a lot of it, but I did it because that's how I was raised. And I also was raised in a family where I didn't want to upset my parents, mainly my mother. She was the matriarch, if you will, of our family. And I didn't want to upset her. I didn't want to do things wrong because I was afraid of hurting her feelings or whatever it was. So imagine her surprise when at the age of 17, I met someone who was like, hey, come to this fellowship. And this person wound up being my ex-husband. We were married for
Yeah,
quite some
not
time.
me.
Not this man. But my ex-husband witnessed to me at the age of 17. And just like you, Brian, I was like, okay, I want to be with this guy. This is what he's doing. He's inviting me to this thing. I'm just going to go. And it wasn't two fellowships in, similar to you, where you're just like, things are clicking. And you
Yeah.
know what? Those questions that I had in the Catholic religion and asked the priest or asked, my CCD teacher, God answered when I went to fellowship very clearly and from the pages of the word. And
Right.
I was so thankful. And like Laura said, I got to that point where I was in it now for me. Even
Right.
and I remember thinking this, even if this guy leaves and he's not doing this anymore, or we break up or we're not together, I'm still gonna do this. You know what I mean? Because that's how much I wanted it.
Yeah.
Um, a couple kids later and just some issues with the two of us. We did wind up divorcing, which again, Catholic wise, completely frowned upon. I mean, obviously in the eyes of God, it's not his original design. He wants you to be married and be with the same person. But you know what? My happiness was on the line. My children's happiness was on the line. And I made a decision and I beat myself up about it for a while. And then I finally came to the realization that this is what I needed to do for myself. Once I came to that realization, it was probably about 4 or 5 years later, I met John. And he's the reason why I got divorced because it was God saying there's somebody out there for you.
I'm taking the blame for it. I wasn't even there.
There's somebody out there for you that's gonna be that missing piece in your heart that you prayed for, Laura. Like you said,
Yeah.
you prayed for a situation. I prayed for a godly man. And what's really weird is that when I did get divorced, I was going to a fellowship by myself with the kids for a little bit, and then I stopped going. Life got in the way, and I got tricked out of fellowshipping with, my friends and these people who cared about me. I got tricked for quite a long time.
But you were also involved in a big fellowship back in Arizona, right? That was like
Yeah.
a super tight family, and you guys were
Yeah.
you
It
guys
was
did
a different
everything together.
situation
And so like
when we moved here.
coming out to Florida, you were before you made the transition to kind of not walk away, but get off the path, let's say, you had a pretty deep. So yeah, that's
I still had a relationship with God though. So even though I wasn't fellowshipping with a group,
that's true.
which we'll talk about, and I'm sure in future episodes, but it's so important to have fellowship. I mean, that's what this is. But I did have fellowship with God. I was still walking with God. Was I making mistakes? Was life harder because my mind wasn't 100% in the right place? Absolutely. And that's my testimony of coming back and being involved. But in that meantime, I had met John and we had discussions. I was sharing with him what I knew. I was
Yeah.
basically witnessing to him for 6 years before he wound up come into fellowship with me. I wound up finding my way back, and John came with me, and within a couple fellowships as well. Again, God knows our heart, and He knows what it's going to take. Brian, He knew what it was going to take for you for
Yeah.
that light to switch on for you, and He did the same thing for John when he came. But I'm just what a freeing experience it was for me to find the truth of God's word in comparison to what I lived before. Just the pressure that I put on myself that was initially put on me by my mother. I've been able to over the years heal from that and let go
Sure.
and see myself as God sees me. And that's been the most freeing part for me, just the wonderful peace that I can experience as a result of it. But now I get to share it with my husband. So go ahead and share your story.
Yeah, so my story is I was raised with a belief in God. My mom, my parents were from the military, so we moved a few times. And my mom was, is Native American, Mexican, Spanish. My dad, super Caucasian. Um, and when I don't remember a time of us really ever going to church or anything like that. I know there were times Like in my adolescence, my mom took us a few times to different churches. Like she was really trying hard to find a church to go to, but her parents were Catholic.
Mhm.
She was raised Catholic. She was baptized Catholic. I was baptized Catholic as well. But it wasn't really a big portion as far as biblical and going to church and that kind of stuff in my growing up. But my mom did have a belief in God, and she would share that with me. And again, coming from our Native American roots, there was a big conversation with my mom specifically that I didn't have to have a building to go
Yes.
to have a relationship with God. I could have that relationship regardless.
Mhm.
So at least as a childhood, my mom had planted seeds, and my dad too, because my dad was a believer in God. He believed very much in God. Did I see him read the Bible? No. Did I see him pray? Sometimes.
Thanksgiving
He,
table.
yeah, and sometimes he struggled with some demons and things too. But he was a hardworking man who took care of his family, so I got that lesson. But growing up, the closest I ever learned to knowing anything about the Bible was were movies. I'm a big movie fan, and
Yeah.
my love of movies really comes from spending time with my mom. During Thanksgiving and the especially Easter time when they'd show all the big Charlton Hestons and the Bible and all those different him parting the Red Sea and all that different stuff. So my belief and my understanding of the word was all based on movies
Right.
and nothing from the Bible, but based on movies. And then I watched my mom again continue to search. She would go from Baptist church to da, 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 da. She spent a whole year with a he was a pastor when we moved to New Hampshire and was in a big Bible study, and she was studying so hard and she had a pretty good knowledge of stuff, but it was very hard for her to drop her Catholic roots.
Yeah.
So I did believe in God, and it's been a lot of Brian, like you, a lot of ups and downs as a teenage boy, and getting into trouble and doing stupid stuff and having anger issues like crazy, very very bad anger issues.
Sit with you guys.
I just had really bad ones, and so learning to control anger and stuff like that, I kind of became a passive person, even though I was physically the persona that I still played sports and was very. There was my outlet for rage was to take it out on other human beings on the football field and baseball field and wrestling and stuff like that, and I could just under the guise of sport,
Yeah.
but you know still had a belief in God, but just wasn't sure. And then just before I met Beth, my dad got sick. I didn't have a great relationship with my father. They moved out here to Florida. I was living in California. I moved out here with my second wife, um, and we lived here.
I'm
And
lucky number 3.
I started having a relationship with my dad again, and just as that relationship started to bud and become something really great, my dad got sick with Alzheimer's and passed away very, very quickly. And of course, abusing the heck out of my little mom, not knowing he was because he was sick. But I took all that anger and frustration out on my dad passing and stuff and that really solidified my anger with God, that I was so mad at God. So when I met Beth and we would talk and we'd have conversations and we'd go for walks and we talk about God and beliefs, you could attest a lot of bitterness towards God, but still believing though.
You still believed he was there.
Still believed it. Yeah, I had a belief in him. So it wasn't, even though I was mad, there was no trying to convince me there was a God. I believe, but I was not happy with him. And so that continued for some time, and you would share the word with me, and I thought you were in a cult, and the things you were talking about seemed very culty, and I was like, I don't know about all this, blah blah blah. And then we finally got together, got married, and I basically tried to help parent your children, and we started struggling with some stuff, which again we'll be able to share in future podcasts or episodes, the struggles with children, and maybe not struggles with children, all that stuff. But you decided you were going to contact a fellowship because you felt like what your daughter or one of your kids needed. Should we share that part? I guess your daughter
It's already out there.
needed some help, and you thought the word would be the answer, and you thought that would get you some clarity. And then you asked me, "Hey, this is what I'm doing, and you can come if you'd like. I don't want to force you to do anything." And I was like, "Ah, no, I'd like to go." And like you, Brian, first of all, as soon as I got there, it was greeted with open arms and treated like a family member. It didn't take long to crack that shell around my heart
Mhm.
from that first meeting with the fellowship, and then within one or two sharings of listening to a teaching, it all logically made sense to me. All the dots were crossed and the I's were
Dotted,
dotted and the
T's were
T's were
crossed.
crossed. It all
Lowercase
just
J's,
fell
yeah.
into place and made some sort of sense.
Yeah.
And it started logically. I'm like, this okay. And then I just started yearning for answers and truth. And every single time I would get into the word, open it up, read it, there's things would open up. Sharings would be like, it was specifically like God was speaking directly to me and to my heart, and found answers of why things happen, why they don't. We have an enemy. There is no chance, there is no denying there is good and evil. And yeah, so answers were answered. And I've now, I have not been in the word for very long, although I mean, geez, gosh, how long have we been going now? It's,
I'd say 2016, so maybe 7 years for you.
I guess, so that's so strange to hear as you're 40, 20,
36 years for me.
seven seems so minuscule in time, but then to really think about, that's a lot of time spent in something that was just getting me, there was always this return on every moment I spend. And I
Well,
now
those
feel
first,
like I have this great relationship with God.
and I think personally, those first years in the word were like, you're like, oh, it's only been so many years. But honestly, it's probably some of the most impactful you will ever have, because
I
you're like
agree.
drinking from a fire hose at that point. Because you're
For
getting
sure.
like
Yeah.
For sure.
all these answers, all these questions answered, all these like, wounds healed, you know, hooks taken out. I imagine like I
For
still have
sure.
hooks that the old man nature hooks that I'm still working on to this day. But a lot of them, they're just like, you're just easily just worked out. It's not even like yanked out. It's like a smooth release. And go back to my being, fishing and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
for
You aren't
sure.
just yanking it out. You're trying to get that hook out so you don't injure that fish or whatever anymore. It's the same thing. It's like, and it's just healed. But there's so much of that at the beginning that it's like, so you're like, I've come so far in such a short period of time. And I'm not saying it tapers off or anything like that, but it's like anything else. You get into the flow of it. Well, now you have this solid foundation. Now
Yeah.
you're getting into like the deep meat of the word, or the meat of life and stuff. And you know, I go back again to like the science of things, and like looking at, like, you start to get into like smaller levels of biology, like the deep, like getting into the cellular level of biology. And you start looking at that from a spiritual perspective, or from a gut, from a intelligent design perspective, and see how the word works with science. And it's not averse to science and
Yeah.
stuff, but so much of that stuff at the beginning. I mean, you're highlighting every line in
Oh yeah.
every
If you look at my,
information, like
and I
you just
can't, I
like
can't let
it's
go of that Bible. It's so highlighted. And I was like,
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot.
Falling apart.
To be
Everything's
honest,
important.
at first at the beginning, it was a little bit of like, hey, look at, I want to just prove to myself, look at all these areas of the Bible I've gone through and made notes, and where I was like, I can't wait for my whole Bible to be just a big giant highlight. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
yeah,
what's interesting is you find yourself where you're like, oh man, I've been back to this one so many times. And
right.
every single time I go back to these verses and these books, every single time there's this new layer that's on or shown, where God
Yeah,
just continues to open doors of understanding. And just, I just like to add, and again, this is the common ground that I feel like we share together. Laura, you said you found your person. That's how I've,
Mhm.
God,
Yeah.
God gave me, all my life. I'd been searching for somebody to share life with and love with, and then for her to bring me to the Word, to be the person that gets me there, and then to be able to share that as a man and wife, as a couple. I bet you guys feel the same way. The beauty
absolutely.
sharing this word together is it's not John's opinion in this marriage. It's not my wife's, Beth's opinion in the marriage. It's what God says about how we should be thinking. And it's taken away so much of the confusion sometimes that I think had we not had it, holy cow. I don't know if it would've made
The
it.
confrontation, because I'm not confronting him. Like if he's having wrong thinking one day, I'm not being like, oh, you're being a jerk today. I'll say, what
Well,
does
you
the
might
word
start
say?
that way, but then,
What-
no, I'm
now
just
wait.
kidding.
What does the word say? What is it?
Yeah.
Should you be thinking this way right now?
Yeah.
Right. Well, and we'll be like, I think you need to renew your mind.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
remember one time
Yeah.
him going, Lori, you need to renew your mind. And I want to.
Yeah.
But
It's not always well received.
Come back,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or-
it's not we're not perfect people, but yeah,
Well,
We
isn't
are-
that the
but
beauty?
it does make life so much easier when it's not like you said, it's not one person in the relationship or the other. It's the word of God is the standard.
Yeah.
And when you say, well, what does the word say on this topic? Okay, so let's get back to what the word says.
Yeah.
Then life like really just flows.
Yeah.
And having that standard together, because we can check each other if we need to. And thankfully, I think at times I'll come to Laura, I'll be like, what do you think about this? And at times she would say, I don't want to make a decision. And for me, and I get that, because I have a very strong-willed, very strong opinionated wife, which is excellent, because I don't want oh, whatever you want to do. I'm like, no. But I think at times she's like, well, I don't want to make a decision. My thing is like, I come to you to ask you your opinion of something, so I can make the best decision for us as a couple. I can make the best decision for us as a family, because sometimes I may not trust my own decision. Maybe I think it sounds good in my head, but then I like to get a second opinion sometimes, because sometimes, there are times I'm like, we're just doing this, and right or wrong, that's the direction we're going, because that's the direction I chose, and we're gonna make the best of it,
Right.
But if I have an option to ask her opinion, I value her opinion, because while she is my helpmeet, she's not my footstool either. I look at her
Absolutely.
as we walk shoulder to shoulder, and we've heard that from others,
Sure.
teachers and leadership, that we walk shoulder to shoulder. At the end of the day, I have to make the final decision. If there's one to be made, I'll make it, no problem. But I value her opinion as a woman of God, as a uh Proverbs 34,
Virtuous.
virtuous woman, as that virtuous
Yeah.
woman. She has an amazing amount of word in her life, an amazing amount of understanding and knowledge and respect for the word, that I value her opinion highly when I make decisions. So again, that's a walk that I choose. Does it make me a weaker man? I don't think so. I think it makes me a
No.
stronger man by having such a strong helpmeet to walk shoulder to shoulder with.
Yeah, and Laura's definitely she's strong for sure. She said
Right?
that
Thank you.
she don't take no crap from nobody. Neither does my wife.
That's why we all get
Yeah, it's so good.
we had a conversation with somebody a couple weeks ago who said he had a problem with identifying as a Christian, because if he wasn't going to be able to give, he's an all or nothing kind of guy, and if he couldn't do every part of being a Christian 100%, then why even try? And I love what you just said, because it is a walk. It is a daily get up, do the word, go to sleep, wake up, repeat. It's different every day. Our challenges are different every day. The way we handle them is going to be different every day. Our mindset is different every day. That's why we have a renewed mind ability. And it made me sad for this guy, because that was what was preventing him from moving forward, is if I can't do this 100%, I'm basically setting myself up for failure.
Well, yeah,
He
but
had in his
put
head.
that mindset into anything, though. It's like,
Sure.
Yeah.
I go to
That's
work.
what we
I go to
said.
work. What if I'm a retail worker, or I'm a production worker, and I have to make a product, and one of them is not perfect, or I upset one customer, or even if that customer, I can't make every customer happy, or What if I get up and stub my toe? I didn't get up perfectly. I mean,
Well,
you could work that into
you
like
can
so
work
many
it in as
aspects of
many-
life, but
Sure.
Yeah.
that's just,
You know, I get up and I'm tired this day and I'm just not my best this day at work or being a mom or being a wife or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's
You
kind of a
can,
cheap cop out. Personally,
yeah.
Well,
I don't know, I'm not trying to
I'm
call
not
anybody out,
trying
but
to
no, I
call this
think
dude out.
but it
I
seems
think that's a
it
big,
seems like an
if you think about, you know, a lot of people's intention of trying to walk, right, is they get stumbled in the I mean, you know, there's some religious aspects to where they're expecting perfection from people, and there is no, I mean, there's forgiveness, but then it's like you're forgiven, but hey, you still got this whole thing that you did. You know, it's forgotten, but
yeah.
it still happened.
Yeah.
And the fact that we, you know, what the truth of what we've read says is that it's the intent, which is if I'm continually trying to better myself moving forward in the thoughts and processes of trying to immolate myself as much with Christ as I can, right? I'm not perfect though. And thank God he has a heart to know that he designed, you know, I hear this so many, well, he designed us. So doesn't God know that we're not perfect people? And it's amazing to me how many times I've heard, you know, other Christians too say, well, and I'm like, why is there a well?
Yeah.
No, he did design us and he does know, he knows our heart for sure.
That's the biggest
And
thing.
that I'm not a perfect person. And like you said, Laura, there's mornings I get up and I'm just tired because I've been trying and I'm walking. But if I get up and I'm tired and I give up, that's a whole different story. But if I'm getting up and I'm still making efforts to be the best person I can be at that moment and still have flaws,
I
is he
I
loving
look
me
at it,
less? I don't think so.
I mean, I look at it this way too. As a father, you know, God is our heavenly father,
Hmm.
right? As a father, our daughter is in high school and she's taking whatever math she's taking. I'm an English major. You get me past like basic math and we're out. We're done. I told him, like, guys, I can help you up to a certain level, and then you're gonna have to consult the Google. But she's grinding this stuff away, and she's had times where she's failed a test, and she gets A's in everything. I mean,
Hmm.
she's like
She
smart,
takes it
and
hard
she
when
takes it
she
hard
gets
when
a
she
bad
doesn't
grade.
get a good grade, and she's grinding out all this extra work to do to bring the grade up and stuff like that. And we're talking, it's like a C. I think she might have had a D, and she brought it to a C. And I'm like, I told her, I was like, it's excellent. But I told her, I said, baby, at the end of the day, if you give it everything you got, and everything you got is a C in that class, I'm okay with it. If you're just like f this, I don't care, and you fail, you half heart it, you half ass it, and you get low grades, I'm gonna have a problem. We're gonna have a conversation. But I see you working. I see you grinding this out. You're up late. And this is the thing you're doing. Everything else is coming in A's, and this is what you're struggling with, but you're still giving it everything you got, and that's what you got. Okay, good. I'm okay with it. You know, I'm okay. I'm not saying settle for that, but if that's the best you got in this course, then go for it. That's me as a flesh and blood man talking to somebody. How, what about God, who's the creator of the heavens and the earth? If we're giving our best effort, or we're doing something, if we're making the effort, is God just be like, you're not perfect, get out of here? Yeah, I can't deal with you.
No.
Sorry, you should have,
I
why
don't
didn't you
know.
do better? You suck as a human. I just don't see that happening, because that would, again, constitute God not being love. It says God is love, right? That's not love.
Right.
And why
Now,
would he have given us his word if we didn't need to read it to understand how to walk perfectly?
if any parent who's had to tell their child to do something a bajillion times before they do it, like take a bath or put
Yeah.
on deodorant or brush teeth
The big one.
or
Yeah.
whatever, and or teach them how to drive a car.
Oh yeah, we're doing that now with our
So,
daughter.
Yeah, imagine if your expectations of your daughter as she's learning to drive the car is zero mistakes are allowed. Every time we go out, it has to be perfection. I mean, there's obviously a standard of, hey, let's not get in an accident.
Let's not die. high. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
you know what I
can't-
mean? There's that, but you're not expecting that, you know, the turns are always going to be perfectly apex
Only-
like a race car driver, you know, and
And
the
only God
braking
could
is not
ask
going to
for
be
that.
perfect. And
Because I can't ask her to drive perfectly because I've never driven perfectly. I mean, I flipped over 2 cars in my life, maybe 3,
Two.
2, whatever. I lost count. But you know, but you know, I can't.
He's not a bad driver,
not a
guys.
bad-
He fell asleep at the wheel 2 different times.
oh, I was going to say,
Oh,
or is it maybe he just
not
is
going
destined to
down
be a
this
stunt
rabbit
car
hole.
driver or something?
I know, but just you know, I was trying to leave some mystery as to what happened. I mean, that's
Well,
you know, that's meat for another
I'm
episode.
defending you.
More cliffhangers.
Yes, thank you.
Tune in next
But-
time.
Why did Brian
Yeah,
flip his
but
car?
The
Tune in
point
next.
being, the point. Let's bring it back to the point. I can't. You know, I couldn't say you need to drive perfectly because I've never done it. God could say, "Yeah, I need you to walk perfectly because I'm perfect," but He doesn't. He's there telling us like, "It's okay. Try again. It's okay. Try again. It's okay."
Yeah, it's
as
all,
long as you keep
and
coming
again,
back
that
and
goes back.
trying,
Yeah,
make that
If-
effort. You know.
if we're continuing on and we're making our best efforts to, I mean, we're making truly, you're honest with yourself and you're making your best efforts to change whatever that is that you feel like you need to change. Why would he look down at that or expect, you know,
And again,
but that's, you know,
anything in life, yeah, anything in life, you know, whether it's the word, whether it's a job or sports, it's like you have to
Yeah.
practice. You have to keep coming back because again, your best athletes weren't the best by not putting hours and hours and hours of time into
Yeah.
it. You know, your Jordans, your Kobe Bryants. I mean, they literally put hundreds of hours in practice outside of their actual games, you know,
Sure.
to be that way. Then again, from an athletic perspective, but the word's the same way. You put it on. You have to go back to it. You have to study it and make it your own so that you can have it in there for those times when you need it. And that's how you build up that it's a constant building, you know. I mean, I was not at the level of believing I am now when I was 17 when I first got into the word, or 18, you know, 18 when I first got into the word. So, you know, it takes time. It's a lifelong thing. Nobody's perfect at this walk.
And
But
nobody is perfect in this life.
Yeah.
You know, nobody.
Yeah, no
Jesus
matter
Christ
what
was
the
only
internet tells
perfect
you.
man.
What's
And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say real quick, what's cool is that even if you're functioning at a 68% level, you know, 100% being total perfection, which we're all striving for, the benefits of what we're doing, the fruit is still there because God is faithful.
Yeah. That's what I tell myself. If I exercise today and I didn't yesterday, well, it's more exercise that I did today than I did yesterday. It's more,
Yeah.
you know, it's more effort I put in. If I study the word today and I put it on and I reflect on something, well, it's more than I did the day before. And you know, you don't know how many days you have, so why not, you know, make that effort, you know.
Well,
each
I know how
day.
many I have, Brian. I've got forever, so I'll see you on the other side too. Hey, this is really a great jump off just to remind, you know, the point of why we wanted to get together to have these kinds of discussions, which is, you know, the four of us are not perfect people, and our hopes, right, is hopefully you guys will chime in that if I let you, right, is that is that, you know, maybe there's somebody out there listening to this who is, you know, had these thoughts and questions and wonders, you know, can I have a relationship with God? Is there a God? All those kinds of things. And that they can see that here are four people, not just two couples, but four people, individuals who have a totally different a road to get to where we are, believing in the same God, believing in the same truths. And that it is possible from all those different aspects of life to find your way to have this great relationship that I know I have. I know I've seen with you guys, because I've experienced it, you know, side by side with you at our fellowship, to what that love of God feels like, and also just the not only are you know this wonderful couple that we know in our fellowship, but my brothers and sister in Christ, you know, it's phenomenal.
What's cool for me is that when I was fellowshipping back in 2004, I knew you guys and we
Yeah.
hung
Yes,
out.
Yeah.
I remember?
Yeah.
You were blonde then.
And you were just kids and you were just dating. So
Yeah, you guys have come so far.
so to see who you are now and how you're raising your kids, it blesses me to see the growth in the two of you. And I feel like even just with us being in the fellowship, I know I've grown. I know watched my husband grow from this person who, oh God, to now praise God. We just lost your mom,
Yeah,
and
recent loss.
a potentially another devastating situation for you handled completely different because he now has peace and he knows the truth about that, and that may be a future episode as well. What happens to us when we die.
So I think it'd be kind of cool to go around and each one of us kind of talk about what we're hoping to get out of, or that we're hoping to get out of doing this. I know I have an idea of what I've been this feeling of wanting to share this whole time. Us being able to opportunity to do this with you guys is so great.
Well,
So excited about it.
we are at about an hour here, so
Yeah,
we'll make it short, but we'll do a little closeout. So what do you guys hope to be able to convey?
Take it away. Put them
Well,
on the
for me,
spot, didn't we?
I think that it's great to have these conversations, just to again get some time to chat about it, kind of feel, make it known that we're not like, again, some cloistered, like it's all Bible all the time kind of stuff. Like, I'm a believer, but I also have different spheres in my life that I interact with, and I try to keep Christ at the center of my life. But I also am, a husband, I'm a father, I'm, I work, I have other extracurricular activities outside of, all these things that I do, and how that my walk is interacting with that. I'm not always speaking the word to every person I interact with in every situation, but it colors my decisions, and how it's helping me overcome some, again, like I said, old hooks that I am still working on to this day. But again, that's something that just be fun to share. I think share those experiences again. Let folks know that it's not you can be you can have your opportunities, and again, have that old man. Just we work on those every day, and to show that there are people out there that we work on these things every day, and it's a constant walk.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm thinking about.
I'll
Awesome.
go alongside that one and just say, being a Christian is not necessary. It's not being a religious person.
Yeah.
I've never considered myself a religious person. I'm not preachy with people. I'll share when the opportunity arises, and if there's no interest, then great, let's talk about something else. And yeah, we're Christian, and that might be like the most important part of our lives personally, like for each of us, but we're all whole people in that. Again, we all have different hats that we wear in our lives. That just happens to be like the hat that goes on top of all the other hats.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure that's the part, for a lot of people, there's the struggle is how do you wear all those hats? Right. and be impactful.
And not get
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, yeah, but how can you still be impactful and do all these things when you have that crown that is the top part that you're gazing your whole perspective of the rest of those entities that you interact with, and that's, for a lot of people, that's hard, and I think it's helped. It makes those interactions much easier because it's again, I'm not coming at a lot of things from John's opinion. It's I have this guidance of where my life is in the way I believe. So okay, go ahead, babe. What do you think?
For me, like Laura was saying earlier, I don't feel like being a Christian is me being in this box. I felt like in the Catholic religion, I was in a box. I had to act a certain way, do a certain thing. I too, I wear beanies, I wear Converse sneakers. I'm very rarely dressed up. I'm, I don't know. John's always like, what bank are we going to go rob today? Because the way I'm dressed, I don't,
Are you and Ice T gonna?
I'm from Jersey, and I'm not saying anything bad about Jersey, but I can be abrasive sometimes when I talk to people.
You can when you're talking.
When I'm talking, I get in it, and I don't come off as this, oh, let me help you. It's more like, what can I do for you? It's more of that.
What do you
And I
want?
don't feel like I fit the mold either of what somebody would look at and see Christian. But if they watch what I do, and if they watch the love of God that I walk with, you can see it, because it is conveyed under your black outfit, Laura. You can see that, you know.
Mm.
It's not what's out here. And I think that's something that I've recently seen in the last couple of years, is that, and I'm guilty of doing this. I'm guilty of judging people by maybe what they look like or what they do. And I'm really that's just an area where I've grown, where I'm coming out of that, and I'm seeing the heart of people more, because I want them to see my heart as well. I'm not the perfect mold either. And we've just found such great peace and happiness in our life. And we share that. We are people who leave our house every single day to go out in the world and meet new people and help, excuse me, help new
Getting
people,
choked up.
help people, and, whatever we can do. And I feel like we are lights in this world dispelling darkness. And I know the two of you do that too, but that's something that we strive to do. And so my goal is that we can reach people here with that light. And, I don't care if anyone ever calls me and says, oh, where do you fellowship? Can I come to your fellowship? This is not about necessarily making that kind of communication, but just starting the conversation
Be
about
awesome though.
who is God to you? Who is God in your life? And just repairing that, because we've been given this ministry of reconciliation. God doesn't say that we have to be a part of it with that person. We just need to get that person back to God. That's our goal. So, however I do that, and I feel like there's been people that I've spoken the word to that have gone a completely different direction, not fellowshipping with me, but they are fellowshipping in other churches and other things. They're attempting that relationship with God, and that's all we can believe for people. And I used to not be okay with that, and now I am. That's an area of growth for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah, for me, it's been something. It's been again only 7 years for me, but over the course of the last probably 5 years, I felt this draw and pull to be able to share that a guy like me, who's a hot rod guy and draws pictures and hangs out with dirty, greasy car people and stuff like that. I have this whole other life that is outside of my fellowship, that where a lot of the people don't know. Well, I haven't specifically gone out and said that this is who I am, for that kind of thing. But a lot of them have said, you can tell that you're a faithful man, and those kinds of things. But it's something that's been on my heart. We have contact to so many people, that I feel like, gosh, if I could just share my love of God with those people, maybe one of them. But it's, unfortunately, when you're talking about social media and different aspects, we got to tread lightly on a lot of, like, our retail jobs. You got to tread lightly on a lot of things. There's a lot of rules to sharing and stuff like that. I agree with you, Laura. There's this persona, and it seems like it's gotten worse over the years about what a Christian is. And this, if you ask somebody about what a Christian is, they give you probably about 100 different answers. And it's such a mishmash of the identity, and it, hoping maybe our voices can maybe pierce through, and somebody who's listening can hear and go, oh, well, here's not necessarily a different take, but here's some people just being real about their lives, who aren't pretending, who aren't acting like they're this and saying that we're four people, two couples who really have a love of God and are living lives to the best they can with God as the forefront.
Yeah.
I think that, again, this discerning the difference between being a Christian and being religious. I think that's really, for me, that's a big difference, because I'm still not a fan of religion,
Me neither.
Same.
but knowing the simplicity and the truth of God's word is what's, I think, extraordinarily valuable, and something we've been questing for a very long time, and we have a lot of great knowledge and a lot of great understanding, but it is again a lifelong journey. So
For sure. All righty. Well, Brian, we are gonna be ending the recording here, but anyone who's watching this, thank you for tuning in.
Yeah,
This
thanks
has
for hanging
been
out. More episodes to come.
the Word with Friends podcast. This is
I'm John.
our intro. I'm Beth.
I'm Brian.
Laura.
We're so happy that you guys took a little bit of time to listen to us, and we hope to hear you and see you come back. And we can't wait to share more of our lives with you. And again, we can't wait to share our love of God with you. And hoping that you find a place, a relationship with God yourself.
For sure. All right, guys. God
All right.
bless.
God bless you.
Bless you.
See ya.